Linda Richards pulled up outside her house and opened her garage door with her remote. She drove inside as she always did and noticed that her husband's truck was not in the garage. Perhaps he'd taken the kids out for dinner, she thought. It was too late for them to go out, but on the other hand, the children didn't have to go to school tomorrow since it was Friday evening. She smiled at the thought of Jack taking care of the kids for a change, as she often felt like she was taking care of 3 children instead of just 2. She got out of the car and entered the house. It was already dark outside. The inside of her house, shared with her husband and 2 children, seemed oddly quiet without the light and noise of video games coming from their big screen TV. She remembered what she had done earlier that evening with her lover Michael, and felt a little guilty, but only for a moment. Looking around the dark, quiet house, she wondered if this would be her fate if Jack decided to finally end their marriage. After thinking for a moment, she laughed and headed upstairs. She thought that if Jack was going to do something, he would have done it already. She'd been dating Michael for 8 months, and Jack had bought into all her excuses. She used to only visit him 1 or 2 days a week, but lately she'd been spending up to 4 evenings a week at his house, including Fridays. She'd been making excuses for Jack, and she was pretty sure he knew what she was doing, but he never pushed her. He didn't even question her when she lied and told him she'd been at a weekend conference in New York a month or so ago. The truth was that she'd spent that weekend with Michael in New York. Michael was the only one who needed to attend the conference, and she was his +1 for the entire weekend. They were planning to spend a whole week on a cruise. Together, they just needed to find an excuse that Jack would accept. She went upstairs, undressed, and slipped into the shower. She wanted to be as fresh as possible for her husband when he returned with the children. She wanted to be clean in front of Jack in case he wanted sex. Of course, he hadn't been flirting. Given how he'd been lately, she didn't think he'd do it tonight. She thought no one ever knows was a good bet. She slipped under the covers and quickly fell asleep. The next morning she woke up expecting to see her husband next to her, but he wasn't there, and his side of the bed didn't look like it had been disturbed. She listened but heard nothing else in the house. Maybe they're outside, she thought. She stood up, put on her robe, and looked around the house, but there was nothing to indicate that they were there. She looked outside, thinking maybe they were working in the yard, but there was no one there. She ran around the house. She called them, but there was no answer. She was really upset and looked into the garage, but Jack's truck was still missing. She ran back upstairs and looked in the closet. All of Jack's clothes and toiletries were gone. She ran into the children's bedrooms and saw that their things were also missing. As he finally left, she took out her phone and tried to call Jack, but got a message saying the number was no longer in service. Oh no, she thought. She called his parents in Southern California, hoping they might know what happened. "Mom, it's me, Linda," she said when Jack's mother answered. "Have you heard anything? Has there been any word from Jack or the kids lately?" "No, nothing at all," said Lorraine. Jack's mother, "Everything is fine. The number you're calling is no longer in service. I don't know what to tell you, Lorraine. Maybe you should call the police and report them missing." "I will do so. Thank you." She was lying on top of the envelope, frightened. She opened it and pulled out a piece of paper, a typewritten note from Jack. She sat down with a cup of coffee and read the note. "Linda," the note began, "in case you haven't figured it out yet, I'm leaving the children with me, and they are fine. It's obvious to me that you forgot that Friday was our 15th wedding anniversary. Of course you chose to spend it with Michael Freeman rather than me, but I'm really not surprised. This isn't the first time you've missed an important family event. Last month you apparently forgot that Jason turned 13. I told him that you were busy at work and, of course, you couldn't get out of it. I know you were in Freeman's bed, as you were for Allison's birthday 3 months ago. She was really upset when she found out you put your lover above her. Do you remember how Jason got injured playing football at school 2 months ago? That's right, you didn't bother to look after him. You were looking after him because you were with Freeman. The school told me that they tried to call you, but they were told that you were in a meeting. I was pretty surprised when the private investigator told me that you and Freeman were actually doing the horizontal mambo at the Hilton that afternoon. I've known about that for a while. I know you've been seeing Freeman for a while now, and the kids know about it too. I also know about that conference you went to in New York and the cruise you and Freeman are planning for later this year. You don't have to lie to me about it anymore since you decided that. It seems that Freeman was more important to you than your family. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I hoped that you would break up with him and become my wife and mother of our children again. Perhaps we could work things out, but you chose not to. You've been practically absent for the past few months, so now it's my turn. I'm leaving, and since you don't seem to care about the children, they also left and will stay with me. I'll be handing you the divorce papers early next week at work. I'm filing for adultery because it's legal in this state, and I'm also suing Michael for alienation of affection. It's also a crime in this state, but I may not get much, if anything at all. That doesn't matter though, it's the principle that matters. You see, I teach kids that bad choices have consequences. Considering that you chose your lover over your children and left them in my care for 3 or 4 nights a week while you were having sex, I think you should be held accountable. I'm asking for custody of the kids, and you might have to pay child support, since you make good money. I don't want you to have to pay spousal support, but you can still see the kids. You'll have to get a passport and pay for your own travel, though. We're moving to Australia. I've accepted a promotion and will be leading our company's operations there for at least the next 5 years. I'd hoped to share this good news with you, but as always you chose to spend your evenings with Freeman, and I never got to celebrate my promotion with you. You will also find a signed resignation letter in the I'm leaving you the house and half of our bills in the top drawer of my desk. I've taken my name off everything, so it's all yours. Enjoy. If you decide to fight your divorce, you could become the next internet porn sensation. Along with your resignation letter, you will find a package containing several rather explicit. I've also included a few photos of you and Freeman together. These are just a few of the many hours of video I filmed with you both. I'd like to say that the last 15 years have been great. Unfortunately, I can't say the first or so were good. I gave you all the love I could, but obviously that wasn't enough for you. For the past year or so you've been distant and have rejected all my attempts to win you back, offering only flimsy excuses for your constant absences. You may have noticed that I haven't had sex with you for quite some time. To be honest, the thought of getting a few sloppy seconds from you filled me with disgust. I suspect you thought I didn't mind what you did because I never tried to physically stop you. You know I would never physically harass you or tell you what to do. I'm just not wired that way. But the truth is that you hurt me more than you know, and I will never be able to overcome this. So please don't waste my time with empty words and excuses. You should know that in all the years we were together, I never even considered cheating on you. I have always been there for you and the children. You were my main priority above everything else. On the other hand, you haven't been with us for it's been 8 months now, and we're the ones who no longer exist. I hope it was worth it for you. Don't try to contact me or the children. I'll let them contact you if they want, but I have to warn you that they're not very happy with you right now. If you have anything to tell me, please do it through my lawyer, whose business card is in this envelope. In the envelope she found a note saying, "Goodbye, Linda." It was signed simply Jack. Linda folded the note and put it back in the envelope. She took out Jack's lawyer's business card and placed it on the table, promising to call on Monday. She took out her cell phone and called Michael. He answered after the second ring. What did he do? Michael was pretty mad when she told him what Jack had done. I thought he was cool with it. What did he say? She pleaded with Michael, strolled up to the house and ignored the man parked just down the street in a nondescript sedan. Jack said, "When your mother finished talking to Linda, you're welcome, son." She hugged him and said, "Promise me you'll call when you get to Melbourne." "I will," he told her. The children hugged their grandmother one last time, and all three headed to the airport. This was the start of a new adventure for the children. For Jack, it was the end of a 15-year chapter in his life. It was the start of a new chapter in his life. Part of him missed Linda, but another part was glad to be away from her. She had been unkind to him for 8 months with Freeman, and now it was all over. It was time to start anew. As promised, Linda was served with divorce papers at work the following Monday. The process server made sure to announce that she had been served with divorce papers on the grounds of adultery and neglect. Linda felt her face flush with embarrassment as her CO workers looked at her. The other workers looked at her. Michael Freeman has been sued for alienation of affection. Linda contacted Jack's lawyer, but he just told her to either sign the papers or hire her own lawyer. She spoke to several lawyers, but they all said that Jack's offer was as fair as she could have expected given the circumstances. She signed the papers and gave them back to Jack's lawyer. Meanwhile, Jack had moved into his new flat in Melbourne. The children loved their new surroundings, although it took them a while to get used to the area. Jack read the email from his lawyer with interest. He was pleased to learn that Linda had signed the papers, but unhappy that she had moved Michael to his former home. He figured it was just a matter of time before this happened. The divorce was finalized quickly because Linda did not object. The court ordered her to pay a small amount of child support, which she did. Jack didn't really need the extra money, so he put it into a college fund for the kids. Freeman settled with Jack's lawyer out of court. The money was also transferred to a college fund for the children over the next 2 years. Linda sent the children Christmas and birthday cards as well as a short letter to each of them. From these letters, Jack learned that she sold the house and married Michael. It turned out that Michael was cheating on her after doing an internet search. Jack learned that the woman Michael was dating was married, and her husband wasn't too happy about being cuckolded. As a result, both Michael and the woman were shot in the head with a .45 caliber bullet. Jack's husband ended up in prison. Jack wasn't surprised. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Linda kept promising to visit the children, but never came again. Jack wasn't surprised. It didn't take long before the kids simply laughed at her promises, calling them just more smoke and mirrors. Over time, postcards and letters began to arrive less frequently. After 3 years, they stopped coming altogether. Jack met Chloe, a blonde, beautiful woman who was originally from Adelaide. Chloe had moved to Melbourne from Adelaide 5 years earlier after her husband left her for another woman. They dated for almost a year before he proposed. "Are you sure about this, Jack?" she asked. "You know that I can't have children, and that's what made my first husband leave." "Your first husband was an idiot. I've never been so sure of anything in my life." "I love you madly and want to spend the rest of my life with you," he replied. "I love you madly too." "But what about your children?" she asked. "They're fine with me as their stepmother." "Let's ask them," Jack said the next day. Jack and Chloe were babysitting in his apartment. "Guys, I fell in love with Chloe and asked her to marry me." "Your stepmother, no," Allison said, causing Chloe to recoil in shock. Jack looked at his daughter surprised. "Why not?" he asked. "Because Dad," she replied, "Jason said we don't want her to be our stepmother. We want her to be our mother." "Is it true?" Chloe asked. "Do you want me to be your?" Allison said, "But what about your biological mother? She gave up on us a long time ago." "If you want to marry Dad, you'll have to become our mum," she added. "Are you ready to do this?" Chloe looked at Jack in shock. She then looked back at the children and pulled them into a hug. "I would like to be your mother," she said, tears streaming down her face. A couple of months later, Jack and Chloe got married in a small outdoor ceremony. Allison was Chloe's maid of honor, and Jason was Jack's best man. After 5 years, they went back to the States for a quick visit. Jason had been accepted into the Air Force Academy, so they decided to take him there after a short stop in Southern California, where Jack introduced Chloe to his parents. From there they flew to Denver, where Jack was to meet with his boss and the board of directors before returning to Australia. After checking into the hotel, they headed towards the elevator, but stopped when Jack heard a familiar voice. "Jack, is that really you?" He heard a woman's voice. Jack looked back and saw his ex, Linda, Jason's wife, was heading towards them. She looked as if she had aged 20 years since he last saw her. She was thin and had streaks of gray in her hair. "Linda," he said. "Yes, it's me," she replied. "Who are these people? Aren't you going to introduce me?" "Chloe," Jack couldn't help but smile. "This is our mother," Jason said proudly, with a slight Australian accent. "Her name is Chloe Allison." "But she's not my mother," Linda said, stepping back in shock. "I am your mother," Jason said. "You gave birth to us, but you stopped being our mother a long time ago, around the same time you stopped being Daddy's wife." Linda looked like she was about to faint, and an older man in a suit approached her. "Are you okay?" he asked. Linda shook her head, in tears she was crying. The man gave her a hug and helped her sit up. He looked at Jack, Chloe, and the kids. "Who are you people?" he asked. "We were just passing by," Jack said. "We just reminded her of something she once had but threw away." "Who are you?" Carl Williams asked. "Linda's fiancé and groom," Jack said. "I hope you have better luck with her than I did," Carl said. Are you her first husband? Jack asked. Yes, Carl said. Linda told me about. Did she tell you what happened? Jack asked. She said she made the biggest mistake in her life, Carl answered. Jack said, like I said, good luck to you. You'll need it. See you later, buddy, Jack said with a smile. Jack, Chloe, and the children went to their rooms, leaving the sobbing Linda behind. Was this really your first wife? Chloe asked. Yes, Jack said. If you ask me, I definitely changed. Yes, you did, she answered with a smile. Don't forget about it.